I was 62 years old, retired from 35 years of designing bridges for the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I honestly believe the hardest thing I would ever have to build again was a raised bed tomato garden. Then came Saturday, May 17th, and Margaret Reynolds standing in my backyard telling me I was trespassing on my own property. The sign was nothing special, 12 by 8 inches, white background, black letters, private property, and no entry. I bought it at the Ace Hardware on Broad Street after noticing boot prints in the soft dirt behind the shed and finding my Weber grill rolled 10 feet from where I left it. Laura thought I was being paranoid. I told her paranoia is just good planning that hasn't paid off yet. I measured twice, checked the county survey pins myself, old habits from a lifetime of making sure load-bearing walls sat on the right parcel, and set the post exactly 18 inches inside my fence line. By 10:30 the sign was up, level, plumb, and legal. I took a picture for my own records because that is what engineers do. At 11 o'clock sharp the doorbell rang like a fire alarm. Margaret Reynolds stood on my porch in her navy blazer and white visor, the one she wears rain or shine, as if the sun might sue her for negligence. She held a clipboard in one hand and her phone in the other like twin weapons. Behind her, the morning light caught the gold HOA president pin on her lapel. Robert Callahan, she began without greeting, you have committed criminal trespass. I thought she was joking until I saw her eyes. They were the cold, flat eyes of someone who had never lost an argument she was willing to manufacture evidence for. Margaret, I said, trying for calm, I was in my own backyard. She turned her phone toward me. The screen showed time-stamped photographs of my boot prints circling the fresh post hole, taken from 3 different angles. The metadata read 10:14 a.m. to 10:27 a.m. You installed a no-entry sign, she said, then entered the restricted area anyway. That is trespassing. The sign is binding. You wrote the rule. You broke the rule. I felt the ground tilt under me the way it does when a stress calculation comes back wrong, and you realize the bridge you just designed might collapse. The sign is to keep other people out, Margaret. Not me. Signs do not discriminate, Robert. They apply to everyone equally. You cannot create a restriction and then exempt yourself. That undermines the entire community standards framework. She delivered this nonsense with the serene confidence of a Supreme Court justice reading a majority opinion she had written herself. You have until noon tomorrow, she continued, to either remove the sign and submit a formal apology for installing unapproved signage, or permanently vacate the west 20 feet of your lot. Failure to comply will leave us no choice but to involve law enforcement. She turned on her heel and walked away before I could find words. I stood in the doorway holding a cooling cup of coffee and watched her march down my driveway like a general who had just annexed a small country. That night Laura found me at the kitchen table at 2 in the morning surrounded by survey maps, the county code, the HOA covenants, and 3 legal pads covered in flow charts. She poured herself a bourbon, sat down across from me, and said the sentence every husband dreads. Robert, you're doing the thing again. The thing is what she calls it when I treat a problem like a failing suspension bridge, measure everything, document everything, assume nothing, and never, ever blink. By Wednesday, the entire neighborhood believed I had lost my mind. Helen across the street asked Laura if she should call Adult Protective Services. Old Mr. Jenkins left a note in our mailbox warning that my contradiction could invalidate every no trespassing sign in Willow Creek and expose us all to liability. Someone started a WhatsApp thread titled Callahan Trespass Watch. Thursday night, they called an emergency HOA meeting. 47 people showed up, a record. Margaret had a PowerPoint titled Legal Consistency and Community Safety. Slide 8 was a close-up of my sign with the words contradiction equals chaos in red 48-point font. Slide 12 showed my boot prints circled like evidence in a murder trial. The board, Margaret, Vice President Carl Newsom, Secretary Diane Whitmore, and Treasurer Ed Hargrove, voted unanimously to give me until noon Friday to choose, remove the sign or forfeit permanent access to the west 20 feet of my own backyard. I did not sleep Thursday night. Instead, I turned the house into a command center. 4 motion-activated 4K cameras with audio, 2 on tripods, 2 mounted under the eaves, all streaming to the cloud and to a hard drive in the safe. Redundant power supplies, tamper-proof cases, the works. I bought a second sign that read private property, owner access authorized, and mounted it directly beneath the first. The visual was perfect. 2 signs, 1 message, 0 confusion for anyone with an IQ above room temperature. Friday at 11:57 a.m. Margaret returned with Carl, 2 sheriff's deputies, and a man in a $5,000 suit carrying a leather briefcase. The deputies were the same ones who used to wave at me when I walked the dog. The suit introduced himself as senior counsel for Crestview Luxury Homes. I opened the door already recording on body cam. Sergeant Brooks looked like he had been dragged into this against his will. Mr. Callahan, we have a formal trespass complaint supported by photographic evidence and HOA resolution. You need to vacate the restricted area immediately. Margaret stood behind him smiling the small, tight smile of someone who had waited years for this moment. I invited them all inside. Spread the deed, the plat survey, the tax map, and the county code across the dining room table. Sergeant Brooks studied them carefully. The younger deputy read the second sign out loud, brow furrowed. So the owner can go in? Margaret never blinked. Legal consistency requires uniform enforcement. Mr. Callahan created a restriction and then violated it. That undermines every similar sign in the community. The suit from Crestview opened his briefcase and began reading from a document that declared my immediate removal from the restricted zone pending civil resolution. I asked the deputies if they honestly believed a man could forfeit ownership of his backyard by nailing up a $12 sign. Sergeant Brooks rubbed the back of his neck. It's unusual. Margaret stepped in smoothly. Unusual does not mean unenforceable. The HOA has a duty to protect the integrity of posted restrictions. They left without arresting me, but the report they filed that afternoon was real. I was now on record as a person of interest in a trespass investigation on my own property. That night, Diane Whitmore knocked on my door at 12:47 a.m. She was crying, clutching a thick manila envelope like it was on fire. I can't let her do this to another family, Robert. Inside were 8 years of secrets. Emails between Margaret and Crestview Luxury Homes offering $50,000 per acquired parcel. Bank records showing $390,000 deposited into an account in Margaret's name. Pre-written sheriff's reports with my name and address already typed, dated 3 weeks before I bought the sign. Architectural renderings of 72 luxury townhouses where our quiet street currently stood. My lot was labeled Phase 3, Critical Acquisition. Diane had been Margaret's secretary for 6 years and had watched 7 families forced out the same way. Manufactured violations, escalating fines, threats of criminal charges, until selling at a loss felt like the only escape. Your lot is the cornerstone, Robert. Without it, the whole project dies. She tried everything else. When you put up the sign, she saw her chance. The trespass argument is new, but the goal is the same: make you surrender. I called my old college roommate David, now an assistant U.S. attorney in Richmond. By sunrise Saturday, the FBI had a task force. Saturday at 10 a.m. I turned my backyard into the main stage of the biggest show Willow Creek had ever seen. For cameras, 2 drones borrowed from a friend at the TV station, a 75-inch screen mounted on the deck, and a live stream titled Willow Creek HOA Corruption, The Truth Live. Within 30 minutes, the feed was at 20,000 viewers and climbing. At 10:05, Margaret arrived with 2 sheriff's cruisers, the Crestview lawyer, Carl Newsom, and a court reporter she had hired to make everything look official. The lawyer began reading an eviction notice for the restricted zone. Sergeant Brooks looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. I hit play on the projector. Diane's documents filled the screen in 20-foot glory: the emails, the payments, the fake police reports, the townhouse renderings with our homes erased. The crowd that had gathered in the street went from confused to furious in the space of 30 seconds. Special Agent Ramirez stepped out from behind the oak tree where he had been waiting, badge gleaming. Margaret Reynolds, you are under arrest for wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy, racketeering, and half a dozen other felonies. She tried to run. 2 neighbors I had coached Little League with for 10 years formed a gentle but immovable wall. The Crestview lawyer dropped his briefcase and started looking for an exit that did not exist. Sergeant Brooks took off his hat and apologized to me on camera while half of Virginia watched. We were used, Robert. Every one of us. I'm ashamed I let it happen. The stream peaked at 63,000 concurrent viewers. 6 months later, the final judgment came down. Margaret drew 16 years in federal prison. Crestview Luxury Homes was dissolved, its assets seized and distributed as restitution to the 8 families she had forced out. Every fraudulent sale was voided. The Jenkins family moved back into their house the week before Christmas. Helen across the street baked them a pie and cried on their porch for 20 minutes. The HOA was dissolved by court order and reborn with a new charter written by the residents themselves. Open books, public votes, term limits, and a clause that reads, in capital letters, "No officer may ever receive compensation from a developer, ever." My original sign still hangs on the fence. Laura added a small brass plaque beneath it that reads, "Private property, no entry. Except the owner, because some things are non-negotiable. Some battles are won in courtrooms. Some are won in backyards with cameras, neighbors who finally wake up, and one retired engineer who refused to let anyone, no matter how many clipboards they waved, tell him he did not belong on his own land." So tell me in the comments, when someone with a title and a blazer tries to steal your home by twisting words into weapons, do you pack your bags quietly, or do you turn your backyard into a stage and dare the whole world to watch the truth come out? More than that, when injustice wears a polite smile and carries official stationery, where do you draw the line between keeping the peace and keeping what is yours? I am 62, retired, and I learned something important last year. Peace bought with surrender is just another word for defeat. Drop your stories below. Tell me where you would have drawn the line. I read every single one, and I promise the good guys are still out there listening.